sample sets, even studio and live sets. Now, it's really hard not to look at the front panel and not notice all the very cool controllers on board. 4 rotary knobs, 8 sliders. We have pitch bend, modulation, 2 S switches. Oh, the second one is actually portamento, where you slide into that second note, for example. And if you wanted to change some of the parameters within the sound, then just grab a knob or slider and go. You can see that the first 2 are our filter cutoff and resonance. So you can go into a more kind of muted bass there. And sliders 3 through 5 will adjust the parameters of the envelope. So you go from an instant attack, like that, to a slow attack. Just start playing around with these sliders and get a sound that you want. It's a little too long for a bass. It's a little too short. Something like that. Now, all of the settings for each of these sliders and the knobs are shown on the screen, and there's a legend right there. And to make any changes to what all of these controllers do, just press F4. We can move through all of these different tabs to decide what each controller does, but there's a really handy shortcut that works much faster. Press and hold the Shift button as you activate any controller. Shift and turn a knob and you'll go straight to that screen. Shift and hit a slider and you'll go straight to that screen. A D-beam, S buttons, all of these shortcuts work to instantly get you to the correct screen to change the function of whatever controller you're dealing with. Let's start off with the first knob, so Shift and we'll turn the knob. You can see that the default setting for the first knob is modulation or continuous controller number 1. You can change this by just turning the value dial, or a great feature when you come to many of these parameters is just to press the enter button and a listing of all of the parameters that can be controlled by this first knob. For example, come up and you can select them from the list. So if I was to bring up CC07, which is continuous controller number 7, that's MIDI volume, I could select that and you can see that the first knob's job is to control the volume of the patch. There you go. Knob 1's function is now to change the MIDI volume of that patch, and you can see that displayed right on the front panel. In fact, when you turn the value dial, you can see it on the front panel and also on a much larger display up here. We can decide what each of these controllers can do just by holding down Shift and then tweaking that controller or slider or whatever, and then adjusting what that controller controls, right? Now, while you're in single mode, these settings will affect what happens across all of the patches. You'll need to press F7 system right to make sure your changes will survive a power down, but the changes you make in studio or live set can be stored per set. In other words, your controller settings are shared across all patches in single mode. However, each studio or live sets can have completely different controller settings per set. Now, before we move on,